Adam Hale had been told the penthouse on the 32nd floor of the Crest building was empty. The auction notice had said empty. The closing papers had said empty. The photographs the broker had sent, taken from a camera angle that flattered the kitchen and lied about the size of the bedroom, had also said empty. So when Adam stepped out of the private elevator at 7:30 on a cold Monday evening, with one suitcase and a leather portfolio tucked under his arm, he did not expect to hear the sound of a kettle whistling at the end of the corridor. He stopped. He listened. The corridor was warm against his cold hands. The air smelled faintly of bread and bergamot, of wood polish and a fire that had been kept low. His breath held a moment, brushed soft against his throat. The leather of his portfolio creaked under his fingers. The bright lamp at the end of the corridor cast a sweet amber on the dark floor, and the iron radiator behind him gave a quiet copper pipe shiver. The whistle climbed, found its top note, and was lifted off a stove with the small, clean clatter of someone who had done it many times before. Adam had paid $4.3 million for this apartment. He had signed every page of the contract on a Friday morning, between two other meetings, without looking up. He had not toured it. He had not asked questions. He had wanted, for one specific and slightly humiliating reason, to be done with the matter as quickly as possible. That reason was that the penthouse had once belonged to his mother's oldest friend, a woman named Vivian, who had outlived all of Adam's family but his sister, and the building was 4 blocks from the apartment where Adam had grown up. He had bought it because his mother, in the last sentences she ever spoke to him, had asked him to keep an eye on Vivian. 6 weeks after Vivian's funeral, the estate had put the place up at auction. Adam had bought it without thinking. He had then arranged not to think about it for another 9 months. Tonight was the night he had finally come to walk through it. He set the suitcase on the marble inlay by the door, took 2 steps down the corridor, and saw the lights on in the kitchen. Inside the kitchen, with her back to him, was a young woman in a navy cardigan and a pair of grey trousers, lifting a kettle off the front burner of an induction stove. Her hair was pulled back in a low ponytail. There was a stack of papers on the counter beside her, with a red pen lying across the top, and a green ceramic mug already set out for the tea. She had not heard him come in. Adam stood very still. The woman poured water into the mug. She set the kettle down. She picked up the mug, blew across the surface, and turned around. She nearly dropped it. "Oh," she said. It was a small sound. There was no scream in it, no theatrical alarm. It was the sound of a person who had been startled and was already, in the same breath, beginning to think. "Oh," she said again. "Hello?" Adam looked at her. He looked past her, at the kitchen, the cutting board with a half-prepared sandwich on it, the tea towel folded over the oven handle, the small yellow vase on the windowsill with a stem of grocery store carnations in it. He looked at the open laptop on the kitchen table, at the spelling list pinned to the refrigerator with a tiny magnet shaped like a strawberry, at a worn paperback of Charlotte's Web lying face down on the chair. He looked back at her. "Who," he said quietly, "are you?" "I'm Hannah," she said. "Hannah Lane." He repeated the name back to her, as if testing it, and she said yes. Then he asked her, in the same flat, quiet voice, what she was doing in his kitchen. Her face went briefly pink, then very calm. She set the green mug down on the counter behind her. She wiped her palm carefully on her trousers. "I think," she said, "we have a problem." "Yes," Adam said. "I rather think we do." His voice had gone to the low, polite, deliberate register that his employees called the boardroom voice, and his sister called the worst voice. Hannah Lane did not seem to notice. She came around the kitchen island in small, even steps, like a woman approaching a horse she did not want to spook, and stopped about 3 meters from him. "You're Mr. Hale," she said. He blinked. "I read it on the mail," she said. She nodded at the small console table by the door, where a stack of envelopes had been set in a neat fan. "It started arriving last Thursday. I left it for you." Adam asked if she had paid him. She said yes. He asked her how long she had been living in his apartment. 6.5 weeks, she told him. He closed his eyes. He opened them again. 6.5 weeks, he said. I have a lease, she said quickly. I have it on my phone. I can show you. I rented from a man named Theodore Marsh. He showed me the apartment in early September. I signed a 6-month lease on the 7th. He cashed my deposit and my first 3 months on the 8th. I have the bank statements. She paused. Her voice was steady but had thinned slightly, in the way that voices thin when a person is forcing themselves not to apologize too much. I think you bought the apartment from the estate. I think Mr. Marsh did not have the right to rent it to me. I think we have both been very badly used. Adam stared at her. The kettle, already removed from the burner, was beginning to cool. The smell of bergamot rose from the green mug. Outside the tall western window, the city was a field of small, unsteady lights. He said the name. She confirmed it. He said, very quietly, that the man was Vivian Marsh's nephew. She said the man had not told her so. No, Adam said. He wouldn't. He took 2 steps to the window. He looked down at the avenue. He thought, with a small, clean coldness, about exactly what Theodore Marsh's life was going to look like at 9 o'clock the next morning. He thought about the lawyer he was going to call. He thought about the 11 months he had spent not paying attention to a piece of property he had purchased to honor his dead mother's last request, and about the woman with the spelling list on her refrigerator who had moved her quiet life into the empty space he had created with his inattention. He turned back around. Hannah Lane had not moved. She was standing very straight, with her hands folded in front of her, the way a child stood at a school assembly. There was a small smudge of red ink on her left thumb. You are a teacher, he said. Yes. Where? Park Glen Middle School, 6th grade English. I started 2 weeks ago. I was a substitute for the year before that, in the same district. She drew a small breath. My contract starts properly in the new year. They needed someone for the rest of this term. And you live here? For now, she said. For now. I knew it was too good to be true, she said quietly, almost to herself. Mr. Marsh said the rent was below market because his aunt had wanted it that way. He said she had liked the idea of a teacher in the building. I thought... She stopped. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be telling you this. You don't need to know any of it. Miss Lane? Yes. Where would you go, he said, if I told you to leave tonight? Hannah looked at him. She did not answer for a long moment. She did not look frightened, exactly. She looked, instead, like a person who had been asked an arithmetic problem she had already solved several times in her head and had not enjoyed the result. I have a colleague, she said carefully. She has a couch. Her boyfriend is moving in this weekend. I would not want to be on it for more than 3 or 4 days. And after that? There's a hostel near the school, she said. I have a small emergency fund. I would manage. She would manage. He asked her how long. As long as it took, she said. She said it without theatre. She said it the way a person said a thing that had simply become true after a great deal of hard learning. Adam looked at her for another long moment. He took out his phone. He sent a 1-line message to a man named Marcus, who answered for him at every hour of every day, that read, We have a situation. Hold the lawyers until I call. Then he put the phone in his pocket. He spoke her name. She answered with a yes. He told her, very plainly, to drink her tea. She blinked, asked his pardon as if she had not heard him correctly. Your tea, he said, nodding at the green mug. It will go cold. Drink it. Then sit down at the table. We are going to look at your lease, and I am going to look at my deed, and we are going to figure out what kind of mess Theodore Marsh has made of both of our weeks. Hannah looked at him with a kind of careful stillness. You're not going to call the police, she said. On you, Adam said. No. On Mr. Marsh. Eventually. Not tonight. Why not tonight? Because it's almost 8, he said, and you have a class tomorrow. and I have not eaten since lunch, and I would prefer to start this fight with a working brain." He paused. Then, with a small dry edge that surprised him as he heard it leave his mouth, he added, "Also because I do not want to be the man who throws a 6th-grade English teacher into the street at 8:15 on a Monday night. The internet, Miss Lane, would not forgive me." Hannah let out a short, startled laugh. She put a hand to her mouth almost immediately, as if she had not meant to. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't be," Adam said. He set his portfolio on the kitchen island, between her sandwich and her stack of ungraded papers, and pulled out a seat at the table. The chair scraped. The paperback of Charlotte's Web slid an inch sideways. He caught it and set it on the corner of the table, very carefully, with the cover up. He asked her, with the quiet courtesy that did not match the strangeness of the hour, whether she had eaten. "Not yet," she told him. He observed that there appeared to be half a sandwich on the counter. She said yes. He suggested, without irony, that she might make it a whole sandwich while they looked at their paperwork. She said yes, that she would. She turned back to the cutting board. She picked up the knife. The bread was a thick brown loaf that she had bought at the bakery on the corner because the woman who ran it had remembered her name on the second visit. She cut 2 more slices, one for him, with the same careful, even pressure she used for everything. She did not look at him. Her hands were not shaking. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, the kettle finished cooling. It would later seem to both of them that the entire 11 months that followed had begun, very precisely, in that minute. The kitchen smelled of bergamot and warm bread, and the faint, clean wax that had been used to polish the wooden floor that morning. Outside, the wind pressed once against the western window and let go. The radiator under the sill ticked twice, the small, dry sound of cold copper expanding into a heated room. Somewhere on the avenue, far below, a taxi horn lifted and fell. Hannah's hands moved over the cutting board with the soft, small scrape of a serrated knife on a thick brown loaf, and her breath, when she paused to consider the slice she had just cut, came out in a tiny, visible puff against the cold pane behind the stove. He was 32 years old, and he was very tired, and he had not realized he was tired until he sat down at someone else's kitchen table and watched a stranger cut him a piece of bread. The morning Adam Hale's mother died, 11 months earlier, he had been in a meeting about a port in Rotterdam. He had taken the call in a glass conference room with 12 men around the table, said yes twice and thank you once into the phone, hung up, told the room he would need 10 minutes, walked into the hallway, and stood with his forehead against a cold wall for the entire 10 minutes, without moving. Then he had gone back into the meeting and finished the discussion of the port. He had signed off on a $52 million capital allocation in the same hour as his mother's death, and had not told anyone in the room what had happened until the next afternoon. That was the kind of man Adam Hale was. That, at least, was the kind of man Adam Hale's mother had once been afraid he was becoming. He had not become it on purpose. He had never set out to be the calm, cold-faced billionaire who skipped his mother's last birthday because of a board crisis in Singapore. He had simply, year after year, found that there was always something to do, and that he was always the one who could do it, and that no one was ever going to stop asking him. Hale Logistics had grown from an idea Adam had sketched on the back of a takeout menu when he was 23, into a company with 11,000 employees and contracts on 4 continents. And somewhere in those 9 years, Adam had become a person who did not finish his sentences when he was at home, because there was no one at home for him to finish them with. He had a sister. Rebecca was older by 4 years. Rebecca had married a hedge fund partner named Cyril Wexford, and lived in a house with a view of the river, and a maid who was paid extra to never address the children. Rebecca had loved their mother in her own crisp managerial way, and had handled the funeral with terrifying efficiency. Rebecca had also been, by polite consensus, the one in the family whose feelings were nearest the surface, which Adam understood to mean that Rebecca was the one who got to cry. Adam had not cried at the funeral. He had not cried since. He had also not, in any meaningful sense, gone home since. The penthouse on the 32nd floor of the Crest building was supposed to be a partial fix for that. It had belonged to Vivian Marsh, who had been his mother's college roommate. Vivian had been the kind of woman who hosted 3 dinner parties a year, kept a vase of fresh flowers in every room, and sent Adam birthday cards through college because his mother had asked her to. When Adam's mother had died, Vivian had become very small. When Vivian had died, 6 weeks later, the estate had auctioned the apartment, and Adam had bought it on impulse during a layover in Frankfurt. He had told himself he would either move into it or rent it to a colleague. He had told himself that walking through it would feel meaningful in some way he could not yet articulate. He had told himself a number of things over the past 11 months, each of which had postponed the actual visit by another week. Tonight, finally, he had cleared his calendar. Tonight, finally, he had come to look at it. And tonight, in his very expensive empty apartment, there had been a young woman in a navy cardigan, making tea. She set the second sandwich in front of him at the kitchen table. She had cut it diagonally, the way a child's lunch was cut, and she had put it on a small white plate with a chip on the rim. She set a glass of water beside it. "I'm sorry," she said. "I don't have anything fancy." "Bread is fancy," Adam said. She looked at him. "It's an old line of my mother's," he said before she could ask. "I'm not making a joke." "Oh," Hannah said. She sat down opposite him. She did not eat right away. She unfolded a paper napkin onto her lap, very carefully, and only then picked up her sandwich. The kitchen had gone quiet around them. The kettle was cold now, its copper belly cooling in soft ticks. The stone counter held a thin, warm mark where the bread had been. A faint smoke of toasted crust still drifted from the oven, and the small iron lamp above the table cast a soft, sweet light on the wood. The radiator hissed once and was quiet. Adam's fingers brushed the leather of his portfolio. His shoulders, under his coat, eased down half an inch. Adam opened his portfolio. The deed was at the top. He had brought it with him because he had vaguely intended to walk through the penthouse with it in his hand, like a man taking inventory of a place he was not sure he wanted. He turned it so that Hannah could see, and laid it on the table between them. "This is mine," he said. "All right. Closed 11 months ago. Wired the funds the same day. Title clean. Nothing Theodore Marsh has done since changes any of it. All right. May I see your lease?" Hannah took her phone from the pocket of her cardigan. Her hands were entirely steady. Adam noticed, for the first time, that the screen of her phone was cracked. There was a long, fine line of damage running diagonally from the upper right corner to the lower left. She thumbed past it without flinching, opened a PDF, and slid the phone across to him. He read the lease. It was a perfectly ordinary one-page document. There were no irregularities. The signature at the bottom was Theodore Marsh's, and the property address was the address of this very apartment. And the rent was— Adam read the figure twice, to be sure— $3,200 a month, which, in this neighborhood, would not have rented a one-bedroom, let alone a penthouse with a private elevator. $3,200, he said. She said yes. He repeated the figure once more, this time fastening it to the apartment around them. For this. She told him the man had said his aunt had wanted it that way, for a teacher. Adam took the word teacher and held it out in front of her like a small, delicate thing. She nodded. He told her, more softly, that she had not been surprised. "I was very surprised," Hannah said. "I tried to refuse it 3 times. He said he had been instructed." Adam set the phone down. He asked her by whom. She said, by his late aunt. He said the woman's name. Hannah nodded. He thought about that for a moment. He thought about Vivian, who had once told a 13-year-old Adam that the only thing more boring than a man who never stopped working was a man who had stopped working too soon. He thought about Vivian sending Theodore Marsh, somewhere in his late 30s, to be the executor of an estate he did not deserve to handle. He thought about Theodore Marsh, deciding that since his aunt had wanted a teacher in the building at below-market rent, the cleanest way to honor her memory was to pocket the entire below-market rent for himself. He thought about Hannah Lane, sitting in some leasing office 4 blocks away on a Saturday in early September, signing a piece of paper she had not been able to believe was real. He said her name. She answered. He asked her if she had known his aunt. She started to repeat the word back in surprise. Vivian. She was not my aunt. She was my mother's friend. Oh, Hannah said. No, I didn't. All right. Mr. Marsh said she had been in the building for 40 years. He said she had... Hannah hesitated. He said she had a soft spot for teachers. He said her mother had been one. I don't know if any of it is true. Her mother was a teacher, Adam said. Yes. She taught 5th grade at PS 119 for 31 years. Hannah looked down at her sandwich. I'm sorry, she said. About your aunt. And your mother. Adam had not told her his mother had died. He glanced up at her. How did you know? He said. She flushed. You said your mother's old line. You said it without thinking. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have noticed. It's fine, Adam said. I'm a teacher, Hannah said, with a small, embarrassed half-smile. I notice. It's a hazard. Yes, Adam said. I imagine it is. He took a bite of the sandwich. It was a very ordinary sandwich. There was butter on the bread, and good cheese, and a slice of tomato that had been in the refrigerator long enough to lose its edge, but not long enough to be soft. There was a leaf of lettuce. There was a thin smear of mustard. It tasted, to Adam, like the first Sunday in November when he had been 10 years old and his mother had made him stand on a stool and toast his own bread. He chewed very slowly. He drank a glass of water. All right, Miss Lane, he said. Here is what we are going to do. All right? You are going to finish your sandwich. You are going to grade your spelling tests or whatever it is you are about to grade. You are going to go to bed at a sensible hour. Tomorrow you are going to go to work, and you are going to teach your 6th graders whatever it is you teach them on a Tuesday, and you are not going to mention any of this to any of them. All right? I'm going to sleep in the guest room tonight, if there is one. There is. I'm going to get up at 6. I'm going to call my lawyer. I'm going to call Theodore Marsh's lawyer. I'm going to call Theodore Marsh, briefly, in person. I'm going to get back the rent you paid him, plus a great deal more. You are not going to be made to leave this apartment tonight, or this week, or in any way that you do not yourself choose. Hannah set her sandwich down. Mr. Hale. Adam. Adam, I cannot pay you what this apartment is worth. I cannot pay even half of it. I cannot pay a third of it. He told her he knew. She started to ask him then what, but he said her name once, gently, and she stopped and answered him with a yes. You signed a lease in good faith. The lease was not Theodore Marsh's to sign. That is his problem. It is not yours. You are saying you will not charge me rent? I am saying, Adam said, that we will work out an arrangement that does not involve you on a colleague's couch this weekend. You and I have until the end of February before your contract becomes a problem in either direction. We will use the time. Eat your sandwich, Miss Lane. It is not. Eat it, Adam said quietly, before I lose the dignity of this conversation. Hannah looked at him. She picked up her sandwich. She took a bite. Adam watched her, briefly, with an expression he could not have named if his life had depended on it. Then he looked away, out the western window at the city he had grown up in, and finished his own bread. It was 9:15. Outside, the lights kept moving. The Crest building had been built in 1928, and Mr. Patel had been the doorman for 19 of the last 21 years. The lobby in the early morning smelled of lemon polish and brass polish, and the faint, warm bread smell that always rose around 6:30 from the small bakery on the corner, whose ovens shared a vent with the building's freight shaft. The marble floor caught the cold blue light from the avenue and threw it back in soft, long rectangles. The chandelier overhead, lit only at half power until 7, cast a warm gold pool over the front desk. Underfoot, the rug at the threshold was the same rug that had been there since 1973. In the small, worn patch in front of the elevator was the small, worn patch in front of the elevator. Mr. Patel was a small, wiry man in his late 50s who wore his uniform with the meticulous self-respect of an officer in a navy that had not existed for 40 years. He had grown up in Hyderabad, had emigrated in his 20s, had married a hospital administrator named Syra, whom he met on a bus, and had 2 grown sons, one of whom now worked in actuarial sciences in Chicago, and one of whom now worked in actuarial sciences in Toronto. Mr. Patel had memorized the names of every resident in the building, including the dogs, by the end of his 2nd week. He had also, over those 19 years, become something of a quiet authority on the moral character of his tenants, although he never volunteered his judgments. He had liked Hannah Lane from the first afternoon she had walked through the lobby. She had asked him his name. She had remembered it the next day. She had asked him 2 weeks later whether his sister had recovered from a small surgery he had mentioned only in passing. She had given him a small box of pistachio biscuits at the end of October, with a note that read, "For the doorman who notices everything, with thanks." She had also, in the 3rd week of October, helped him fill out a piece of immigration paperwork for his cousin's son, sitting in the small back office behind the front desk, in a way that made it very clear she had once filled out exactly the same kind of form for a child she had been responsible for. Mr. Patel did not, as a rule, like Mr. Marsh, who had begun to behave as though he owned the entire building since his aunt's funeral. Mr. Patel had also formed a very specific opinion of Mr. Adam Hale on the basis of 3 pieces of information. First, Mr. Hale had not appeared at the building in the 11 months since the closing. Second, Mr. Hale's office had sent twice, on glossy letterhead, to inquire about parking. Third, Mr. Hale had, last evening, walked into the lobby with a single suitcase and said good evening to Mr. Patel without looking up from his phone. So Mr. Patel had been, on the morning following the kettle, prepared to dislike him. What he had not been prepared for, when Mr. Hale stepped out of the elevator at 6:57, was that Mr. Hale would walk over to the front desk, set a small flat box of pastries on the counter, lift his eyes and say, "Mr. Patel, Miss Lane on 32 has had a very difficult evening on my account. I would like to know if she comes back this afternoon as expected, and if so, at what time?" "Sir," Mr. Patel said. "And I would prefer," Mr. Hale added, "that no one else in this building know that I have asked you. That includes Theodore Marsh. Especially Theodore Marsh." Mr. Patel looked at the pastries. He looked at Mr. Hale. He decided he would think more carefully about Mr. Hale. "Miss Lane usually returns at 4:10, Mr. Patel said. "Sometimes 4:20 if it is a Wednesday. She walks. She does not take a cab." Mr. Hale thanked him. Mr. Patel, hesitating, addressed him as Sir. Adam said yes. Then Mr. Patel asked, with careful politeness, whether Miss Lane was in any difficulty. Adam Hale paused, with one hand still on the box of pastries. He looked, briefly, as though he were considering how much to say. "Mr. Patel," he said. "Yes, sir." "Miss Lane is not in any difficulty," Adam said. "Theodore Marsh, however, is in a great deal of it. I would prefer that Miss Lane not be told of this for the moment." "I understand," Mr. Patel said. "Thank you," Adam said again. He turned and walked out of the lobby into a cold blue Manhattan morning, with a phone in one hand and a coffee in the other, and an expression that the morning bellman would later describe as the expression of a man who had not yet decided how much of his life he was about to set on fire. By 8:30, Adam Hale had spoken to 3 lawyers and to Theodore Marsh. The conversation with Theodore Marsh had lasted 4 minutes. Adam had used the boardroom voice for the first 3. He had used a different voice, much quieter, for the last one. By the time he had ended the call, Theodore Marsh had agreed to repay every dollar he had taken from Hannah Lane, plus interest, plus a settlement to be negotiated later, plus a written and notarized acknowledgement that he had no claim of any kind on the apartment on the 32nd floor of the Crest building. He had also, somewhere in the last minute of the call, begun to apologize. Adam had let him apologize for 30 seconds. Then Adam had said, very calmly, "Mr. Marsh, you may apologize to Miss Lane in writing, in your own words, on a single sheet of paper, by Friday. Do not call her. Do not visit her. Do not mention this matter to anyone in this city until I tell you that you may. Do you understand me?" Theodore Marsh had said, "Yes." Adam had said, "Goodbye," and had hung up. Adam had then walked into a coffee shop on the corner of 81st, ordered a cappuccino, and stood at the counter for 2 minutes with his hands flat on the marble, breathing very steadily, until he was sure that he was not going to be sick. That afternoon, Hannah Lane stepped off the M86 bus at the corner of West 84th at 4:08 in the afternoon, with a tote bag of student work on one shoulder and a brown grocery sack on the other, walked the half block to the Crest building, smiled at Mr. Patel as she came through the door, and was politely informed by him that Mr. Hale had asked, if she had a moment when she returned, whether she might join him in the lobby cafe for a few minutes before going up. "In the cafe?" Hannah said. "Yes, miss." "All right." Mr. Patel watched her cross the marble floor toward the small, wood-panelled cafe at the back of the lobby. She took her coat off as she walked, folded it over her arm, smoothed her hair behind her ears, and adjusted the grocery sack so that the leak poking out of it would not catch on the doorframe. Mr. Patel approved. Adam Hale was sitting at the small table in the corner. He stood when she came in. He pulled out her chair. He did it the way men of his generation almost never did anymore, not with a flourish, but as a small, unconscious habit. Hannah felt a vague embarrassment that she chose not to show. He said her name. She said his. He corrected her. She tried it on her tongue, the new, familiar shape of it. She sat. He sat. A waiter came over and asked her what she would like. She asked for a cup of mint tea. The waiter looked at Adam with a small, puzzled frown that Hannah did not understand. Adam said, "She would also like a slice of the pear cake, please." Hannah, who had been about to say no, did not. "You've eaten the pear cake before," she said when the waiter had gone. "I had a slice this morning. It is the only good thing on the menu. I would not have been able to live with myself if I had let you order tea alone." "That's a strong statement." "It's an honest one." She looked at him for a moment. He looked, in the morning daylight that had since become afternoon daylight, exactly what he was. A tall, lean man in a charcoal suit, with the sort of clean, dark hair and clean, dark eyes that turned heads in advertising boardrooms and made staff in lower-end restaurants nervous. He had 3 small lines at the outer corner of each eye that were not crow's feet so much as the place where his expression had been forced to ease, in some past moment, more than once. He was not, Hannah decided, the kind of handsome that was photographed. He was the kind that you had to be in a room with for 10 minutes to begin to notice. "Mr. Marsh has agreed to repay your rent," Adam said. "All of it, including the deposit. The check should reach you by Friday at the latest. If for any reason it does not, please tell me." "All right." "You are not, in any sense, on a colleague's couch this weekend. Do not consider it." She started a syllable that was either an objection or an apology. He stopped her by name, used the corrected one, and held the line. "Hannah, do not consider it." She nodded slowly. "I've asked the building manager," Adam said, "to draw up a 6-month lease in your name for the apartment on the 32nd floor at the rent you signed for with Mr. Marsh. I will sign as the landlord. The terms will match the terms of your original lease. If, at the end of 6 months, you wish to renew, we will discuss it then." Hannah stared at him. $3,200, she said. She confirmed it. She tried to begin the next objection. He confirmed it again before she could. "That apartment is—" "It is what it is, Hannah." She said his name. He answered. She started to say she could not, and he said her own name back, gently, to stop her. "I cannot accept that." "Why not?" he said. "Because—" She was quiet for a moment, ordering her thoughts. "Because it is not what the apartment is worth. Because I would feel that I owed you something I could not pay back. Because in 2 months, people would be talking about it. Because you do not trust me. Yes. Because I do not know you. And because I am a 6th grade English teacher. And you are a man whose name is in newspapers in 3 countries. And the imbalance of this is so large that I cannot see the bottom of it. And I will not put myself or you in a position that I cannot honorably maintain. Adam was quiet. The waiter brought the pear cake. He set it down between them with 2 small forks. He retreated. "All right," Adam said. She started to apologize, but he cut her off gently. "Don't be," he told her. "You are right. The position is impossible." She said, "Oh, so we will adjust it. You will pay the rent at the rate you signed for, which Mr. Marsh has falsely told you was already discounted because of his late aunt. I will not in any sense be subsidizing you. Vivian, in fact, will be subsidizing you. There is a line in her will that her attorneys are still attempting to interpret, which states that the apartment is to be made available to a teacher in the district at a charitable rent for the remainder of the lease year. I had not known about it. Mr. Marsh, I think, did, which is why he was so eager to install one before the will became public. If we honor it, it is not me being foolish with you. It is me being faithful to a dead woman who I happened to love." Hannah looked at him. "Is that true?" she said. "There is such a line in the will," Adam said. "My lawyer faxed it to me at 7 o'clock this morning." "And the rest?" "The rest," Adam said, "is the version I would like to be true. I am asking you to let me have it." Hannah took a small, careful breath. "All right," she said. "All right. I will pay the rent. To you, to the estate, to whichever party is correct. I will live there for the remainder of the school year, until June, and then I will look for something else. I will not stay forever. I am not the sort of person who stays in someone else's apartment forever." "Understood," Adam said. She picked up her fork. "Mr. Hale." "Adam." "Adam, I would like to ask you a question." "Go ahead." "Why are you doing this?" He considered her for a long moment. "Because if I had not bought that apartment 11 months ago without looking at it," he said, "Theodore Marsh would not have been in a position to rent it to you. Whatever harm he intended to do you, he was able to do because of my carelessness. I would prefer that the harm be undone and the carelessness be paid for by me." "That's a very orderly answer." "I am an orderly man." "Is it the only answer?" He was quiet. "No," he said. "What is the rest of it?" "I do not know yet, Miss Lane." He said it without looking away from her, in the same low, even voice he had used for everything since she had set the green mug down the night before. Hannah held his gaze for a beat longer than she had meant to. Then she looked down at the pear cake. She cut off a small piece. She tasted it. It was good, she said. He told her he knew. She reminded him that he had told her to have a piece. He agreed that he had. She said he had been right. He said, dryly, that he generally was. She gave him a quick sideways look that was almost, but not quite, a smile. "Hannah," she said. "Hannah." That, more or less, was how the first day ended. The afternoon thinned to a soft amber outside the windows. The avenue below sent up a low, quiet hum of wind and distant tires on wet asphalt. The penthouse held its warm air like a held breath. The wood floors had a dry, honeyed smell. The leather of the long, dark sofa was cold against the back of his hand when he passed it. Somewhere a radiator ticked. Somewhere else, a copper pipe whispered. The fire was unlit, and the iron grate was clean. That evening, Adam went back upstairs and discovered that Hannah had moved a stack of papers off the dining table and folded a small piece of green felt under one of the chair legs because the floor was uneven. She had also rearranged the salt and pepper, set a fresh tea towel by the sink, and left a small handwritten note on the kitchen island that said, "Took the bedroom on the left. Yours is the bigger one on the right." The window in the smaller one sticks. I left a wrench on the sill. H. Adam stood for a long time looking at the note. He folded it. He put it in the inside pocket of his jacket. He went into the larger bedroom. He hung up his suit. He sat on the edge of the bed, with his hands on his knees, and he did not move for a long time. He had not, in 11 months, opened any of his mother's letters. There were 3 of them, in the inside pocket of the same jacket, beside the green felt note. He had brought them with him to the apartment, with some vague idea that he might read them if he sat at Vivian's old window, where his mother had once also sat, on a chair that no longer existed, in a room that no longer existed, in a building that did still exist. He took the letters out. He held them in his lap. He did not open them. The bedroom was very quiet. The radiator gave a single soft creak under the windowsill, and a thin, cold breath of December air slipped under the lower sash and brushed the edge of his hand. The lamp on the nightstand had a brass base that was warm where his fingertips touched it. The envelopes themselves smelled, very faintly, of his mother's hand cream, a clean almond smell that had never quite left her writing paper. He pressed his thumb against the wax of the seal on the topmost letter and let it sit there, a hard, small ridge under his skin, and did not break it. Outside, the wind moved against the side of the building. Somewhere in the apartment, water ran briefly and stopped. He could hear, very dimly, the small, distant clatter of Hannah closing the lid of a cookie tin in the kitchen. The sound was so ordinary and so unguarded that he closed his eyes for a long beat, and the brass of the lamp grew warmer under his hand, and the wax of the seal stayed unbroken on the envelope in his lap. After a while, the kettle whistled in the kitchen. He went out. Hannah was making more tea. "Sorry," she said when she saw him, asking if she had woken him. He told her he had not been asleep. "Would he like a cup?" she asked. "Yes," he said, "I would." She poured him a cup. He sat at the kitchen table. She sat opposite him. They did not talk at first. She had a stack of essays in front of her, written in 11-year-old handwriting on lined paper that had been folded and unfolded too many times. She graded them slowly, with a red pen, in margins that were full of small, kind sentences. "What do you teach them?" Adam said after a while. "This unit?" "This unit." "They're writing personal essays," Hannah said, "about a place that means something to them. A bedroom, a grandparent's house, a library, a bus stop. They had to choose somewhere small." "What are they like?" "Very honest," she said. 11-year-olds usually are. They forget to be self-conscious for whole paragraphs at a time. "Read me one." She looked up. "Just one," Adam said, "if you don't mind." Hannah hesitated. Then she shuffled through her stack, slid one out, and began to read. It was about a fire escape outside a one-bedroom apartment in the Bronx. A boy named Andre liked to sit there when his sister was on a night shift, because the rust under his hands made the same noise his sister made when she was tired and trying to be patient. The fire escape was, Andre wrote, the only place in the world that he felt his sister with him, even when she was not there. Hannah finished. She looked up. Adam was looking at her. "Hannah," he said. "Yes." "Thank you." She nodded. She began to grade again. He watched her for a long moment. Then he opened the first of his mother's letters, very quietly, and began to read. The paper was thick under his fingers, the kind of cream stationery his mother had bought for 30 years from the same small shop on Madison. The ink was a deep, dark blue. He could feel, against the pad of his thumb, the small, soft scrape of where the nib had pressed too hard at the end of one sentence. The smell of almond hand cream rose again, faintly, when he turned the first page. The lamp on the table painted a warm yellow circle around his cup, and the steam off the surface of the tea curled in a thin, slow ribbon and broke against the cold air near the window. Across the table, Hannah's red pen made a quiet, steady tick, tick, tick on the margins of the next paper, the soft, small sound of a teacher being patient with a child she would not see fail. He read 3 sentences. He set the page down. He drank a small swallow of tea, and the warm bergamot moved down his throat, and into the place behind his sternum where his mother had once told him to set his hand if he needed to remember he was breathing. He picked the page up again. He read 4 more sentences. He stopped. He looked for a moment at Hannah's hands, at the small chip of red ink on her left thumb that had been there the night before and was still there now, and at the way her ring finger curled, just slightly, when she was about to write something kind in the margin. He read the rest of the letter. In the 3 weeks between the night Hannah Lane set down a green ceramic mug at the sound of an opening door and the afternoon Rebecca Hale Wexford swept into the lobby of the Crest building in a cream wool coat and a pair of leather boots, the apartment on the 32nd floor settled, very slowly, into the rhythm of 2 people who were trying not to disturb each other and were succeeding only in being kinder than they had planned to be. Hannah was up at 5:45 every weekday morning. She made coffee in a small steel pot that she had brought with her from her last sublet on Amsterdam, and the smell of dark roast moved through the apartment in a low, warm cloud that reached the doorway of Adam's bedroom by 6. She showered. She dressed. She ate a small bowl of yogurt at the kitchen island, standing, with a textbook on the marble in front of her. By 6:40 she was out the door, with a tote bag over her shoulder and her grey wool coat buttoned to the throat. She walked the 8 blocks to the bus stop, because the cold morning air woke her up the way coffee no longer entirely did. Mr. Patel saw her cross the lobby every morning, said, "Miss Lane," in his quiet, careful voice, and held the door. Adam was up at 5:30. He had been an early riser before the apartment had become 2 people. He continued to be one. He sat in the kitchen, by the western window, with a notebook and a small steel cup of black coffee, and worked through the documents his head of staff had sent overnight from London or Hong Kong or Dubai. He read the news on his phone, with one elbow on the table and the other thumb on his lips. He listened, without seeming to, for the small, soft sounds of Hannah moving in the back of the apartment, the running of water, the click of a kettle, the soft creak of the bedroom door, the small, light scrape of her shoes on the floor of the entry. When she came into the kitchen, he set his phone face down. When she went out the door, he picked it up again. He was not, in any conscious sense, performing the gesture for her. He did not know he was making it. The evenings became, in a way that neither of them named, a quiet, shared meal. Hannah cooked. Adam ate what she put in front of him, and afterward washed the dishes in his shirt sleeves at the small steel sink, and was usually, by the time the last plate was dry, the calmer of the 2. They did not, at first, talk while they ate. They sat at the kitchen table at right angles, with the western window on Adam's left and Hannah's stack of essays on her right, and listened to the city press its low, constant hum against the glass. The radiator under the window ticked. The kettle on the back burner cooled. Once, in the 2nd week, a thin, slow snow fell against the cold pane, while they ate cabbage soup, and the white flakes ran down the dark glass and caught, briefly, on the wooden frame. Hannah said, "Look," and Adam looked, and they did not speak again for the rest of the meal. After dinner, Hannah graded. After dinner, Adam read. He had not read a book for pleasure in 7 years. He found, sitting at the same kitchen table where Hannah was working her way through 23 6th-grade personal essays in red pen, that the part of him which had once read had not died, but had only gone quiet. He picked up a paperback of The Remains of the Day that Hannah had put on the chair as a hint, and read it in 3 nights. He picked up Stoner next, and finished it in 2. He sat at the kitchen table, with one hand around a mug that had cooled to the point of being merely warm, and read for hours, while across from him, Hannah's red pen made the small, steady tick that had become, by now, the soundtrack of the most useful evenings Adam had had in a decade. On the 5th night, he asked her about her own students. On the 8th, he asked her how she had become a teacher. On the 11th, he told her, in a quiet voice and not quite looking at her, that his mother had once wanted to be a teacher and had been talked out of it by her father, and that he had not, until the moment he said the sentence aloud at this kitchen table, ever said the sentence aloud to anyone. Hannah, hearing it, set her red pen down across the page she was grading. She did not say anything for a long beat. She got up. She crossed to the kitchen counter. She took down a small plate. She cut a slice of the pear cake that Mr. Patel had brought up that afternoon as a thank you for a piece of immigration paperwork Hannah had finished, and set the plate in front of Adam, and sat back down. "Eat," she said quietly. He ate. The small, soft taste of the cake, pear, butter, a single warm note of cardamom, moved across his tongue and softened at the back of his throat into something that was not, but was nearly, the kind of taste he had once associated with being a small boy at a kitchen table on a Sunday in the apartment 4 blocks from this one. He ate the rest of the slice without saying anything else. Hannah read another essay. The radiator ticked. Outside, the wind picked up a single dry leaf off the window box of the apartment 2 floors below and carried it, in a thin, slow brown spiral, past the western window of the kitchen. By the end of the second week, the apartment had become, in some unspoken way that neither of them was prepared to acknowledge, a place that smelled of bread, of bergamot, of paper and ink, of the small clean wax that Hannah used on the cutting board, and of a man and a woman who had, very gently, begun to learn each other's silences. By the end of the third week, the New York Sentinel had been circling for a story that they did not yet have. The building manager had quietly issued a clean 6-month lease in Hannah Lane's name, at a rent that matched her original arrangement. Theodore Marsh had paid back every dollar he had taken from her, plus interest. Vivian's will had been quietly clarified by her lawyers. The foundation gala had been added in pencil to Adam's calendar for the 2nd Saturday in December, and Adam Hale had begun, for the first time in 11 months, to sleep through the night. That, more or less, was when his sister found out. She found out on a Friday afternoon from a finance reporter who had been calling her for 12 hours about an unrelated rumor, and who had mentioned, in passing, that her brother had apparently moved a young woman into the old Marsh apartment. The reporter had said it the way reporters said things that they wished to hear someone deny. Rebecca had not denied it. Rebecca had thanked the reporter. She had hung up. She had picked up her keys. By 4:30, she was in the lobby of the Crest building, in a cream wool coat and a pair of the kind of leather boots that made every doorman in New York stand up straighter. Mr. Patel did not stand up straighter. Mr. Patel had been a doorman for 19 years and had stopped being intimidated by leather boots in his second. Mr. Patel greeted her by name. Rebecca told him, flatly, that her brother was upstairs. He told her, with the same patient deference he had once used on Adam, that he was not certain that was correct, ma'am. She said his name. He said, "Yes, ma'am." She told him again that her brother was upstairs. Mr. Patel watched her for a long, polite moment. "Mrs. Wexford," he said, "Mr. Hale is at his office until 6. You would be very welcome to wait in the cafe. I will telephone you when he arrives." "I will go up," Rebecca said. "Apartment 32 is occupied at present, ma'am." "By whom?" Mr. Patel did not answer. Rebecca looked at him. Mr. Patel did not look at her. "By whom?" she asked. "By Miss Lane, ma'am," he answered, "who has a lease." Rebecca repeated the word, "a lease," as if she did not believe it. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "From my brother," she said. "That, ma'am," Mr. Patel said gently, "is between Mr. Hale and Miss Lane. I do not discuss the leases of the residence." For a moment, Rebecca seemed to consider arguing. Mr. Patel waited, with the patience of a man who had outlasted 3 building owners and 1 hurricane. She did not argue. She went into the cafe. She ordered an espresso, and did not drink it. At 10 minutes to 6, when Adam Hale stepped out of a black car on the avenue and walked into the lobby, Rebecca Hale Wexford rose from the cafe table, crossed the marble floor, and slid her arm into his with the smooth proprietary skill of a woman who had been doing it since they were both children. She said his name, low and clipped. He answered with hers, in the same register. "We are going upstairs," she said. He answered, without ceremony, "All right." "To meet her," she said. "All right," he said again. He did not flinch. He did not change his pace. He pressed the elevator call button. He looked at his watch. "Have you eaten?" he said. "Don't." "Don't what?" "Don't pretend this is normal." "It is more normal than you think, Rebecca." The elevator arrived. Adam held the door. Rebecca stepped inside. Adam followed. The doors closed. They rose. "Are you sleeping with her?" Rebecca said, in the way one woman said it to her brother in a private elevator. "No." "Adam." "I am not sleeping with her, Rebecca. I have not been alone in a room with her for more than 20 consecutive minutes since the day she found me in the kitchen." "Then what is she?" "She is a 6th-grade teacher who paid Theodore Marsh for a lease on this apartment that he had no right to give her. She has a 6-month tenancy. She will move out in June. In the meantime, she lives here. So do I when I am in town. There are 2 bedrooms. I take the one on the right, she takes the one on the left. There has been no impropriety." "There has been the appearance of impropriety, Adam, which for you is sometimes worse." "I know." "There is a reporter at the New York Sentinel who knows, Adam." "I assumed." "You assumed?" "I have known for 2 weeks. I have a person in their newsroom. They were going to publish on Monday. They will not now." "Why not?" "Because I have made a different story available to them, which is more interesting and equally true. About Theodore Marsh." "You are throwing Vivian's nephew under a bus." "He threw himself there, Rebecca. I am simply not pulling him out from under it." The elevator chimed at 32. The doors opened. Adam stepped out. Rebecca followed. He keyed in the code. The door clicked open. Hannah was at the kitchen table. She had a blue mug in front of her, a stack of books on her left, and a small stack of newly photocopied tests on her right. She had taken off her shoes. Her hair was up in a quick twist held by a pencil. She wore a grey sweater that had been washed many times. She looked up. "Oh," she said. She rose. "This is my sister," Adam said, in a voice that made it perfectly clear that Rebecca had not been invited and was nonetheless welcome. "Rebecca, this is Hannah Lane. Hannah, my sister Rebecca." "Mrs. Wexford," Hannah said. "Miss Lane." Hannah moved smoothly to the cabinet. She took down a 3rd mug. She filled it with hot water from the kettle that was always, by now, simmering on the back burner. She set the mug in front of Rebecca with a wedge of lemon and a small saucer of sugar. "How long have you been here?" Rebecca said. 9.5 weeks, ma'am." "And before that?" "Before that, I was in a sublet on Amsterdam, ma'am, for 11 months. Before that, I was in graduate housing in Riverside. Before that—" "That is enough, Hannah," Adam said. "It is fine," Hannah said. She sat back down at her own place. She closed the book in front of her, neatly, and set the pencil from her hair on top of it. "Mrs. Wexford," she said, "I understand that I am a great inconvenience to your family. I would like you to know that I have already told your brother that I will leave at the end of June. I would also like you to know that he has not asked me for any favor of any kind, and that I have not asked him for any. I pay my rent, I cook for myself, I keep to my side of the apartment. I am, I think, the most boring possible tenant your brother could have." "You are also," Rebecca said, "very young and very pretty, and my brother is 40 years old." "I am 32, Adam said. "Adam. Rebecca, Hannah is not. He is 40 in the way that men of his life are 40, Rebecca said, looking at Hannah. "Regardless of the calendar. You are not stupid, Miss Lane. I can see that you are not stupid. And you have walked, by accident or design, into an apartment that he bought because of our mother. I am asking you, woman to woman, to think very seriously about the position in which that places him." Hannah set down her mug. She looked at Rebecca steadily. Hannah addressed her by name. Rebecca answered with a yes. Hannah told her she appreciated her candor, that she would like to be candid in return. Rebecca said, "Please, I did not walk into this apartment by design. I walked into it because Theodore Marsh stole my money and pretended he had the right to give it to me. The first thing your brother said to me when he found me here was, 'Drink your tea before it goes cold.' The second thing he said was that he did not want to be the man who threw a sixth-grade teacher into the street at 8:15 on a Monday night. Since then, he has paid for the harm Theodore Marsh did me, in full and out of his own pocket, despite the fact that he was the victim of the same fraud and was under no obligation to assist the second victim of it. He has not flirted with me, he has not touched me, and he has not asked me for anything. Miss Lane. I am not finished, Mrs. Wexford. Rebecca stopped. In the 3 weeks I have lived with him, Hannah said, I've watched your brother sit at a kitchen table at midnight with a folder of letters from your mother in his hands. I have watched him not be able to open them for the first 6 nights. I have watched him sit with tea and read 1 page of 1 letter and put it back, and then come back the next night and read 1 more. I do not know the inside of your family. I would not presume. I do know that what your brother is doing in this apartment is not what you think it is. Rebecca was silent. I would also, Hannah said, very gently submit that whatever the Sentinel reporter wished to imply, the man you came here ready to accuse is the same man who walked into a kitchen 3 weeks ago, found a stranger using his stove, and asked her if she had eaten. He did not ask her if she had any place to go. He asked her if she had eaten. I do not know if you understand how rare a thing that is. I do. For the first time since she had entered the building, Rebecca Hale Wexford did not have an immediate next sentence. She picked up the mug. She held it. She did not drink from it. You are very loyal to him, Miss Lane, she said, for a woman who has lived with him for 3 weeks. I am loyal to honesty, Mrs. Wexford. In this case, those are the same thing. Adam, who had not spoken in 2 minutes, put a hand briefly on the back of Hannah's chair, and then took it away. Rebecca, he said. Yes. It is good to see you. Will you stay for dinner? Rebecca looked at him. She looked at Hannah. She looked at the kitchen, at the spelling list still on the refrigerator door, at the green ceramic mug now slightly chipped, at the stack of essays graded in red ink with small, kind sentences in the margins. I will not, she said. Not tonight. She put the mug down. She picked up her bag. She walked to the door. At the door she paused and turned, and looked at Hannah for a long, even moment. Rebecca spoke her name across the small kitchen. Yes, Mrs. Wexford, Hannah said. Rebecca told her, very plainly, that her mother would have liked her. Hannah thanked her. Rebecca closed the door behind her. She did not, in the end, speak to the Sentinel reporter again. In the 3rd week of November, Hannah Lane stood in front of 23 6th graders in a small, overheated classroom on the 2nd floor of Park Glen Middle School, and held the line on a parent. The room smelled of pencil shavings and cafeteria pizza, and the faint, warm dust of an old radiator that had been ticking under the window since before the first bell. The lights overhead were the kind of fluorescent light that hummed at a low, quiet pitch beneath every other sound, and the linoleum under her shoes was scuffed at the threshold from 20 years of small, hard sneakers crossing in. The whiteboard at the front of the room still carried, in green dry erase marker, the tail end of yesterday's vocabulary list. She had not yet had time to wipe it down. The parent's name was Mr. Daniel Renz. He was the father of a boy named Marco Renz, who, at 11 years old, was the size of a 14-year-old, and had spent the first 2 months of the term making a smaller boy named Jason Cho's life so miserable that Jason had begun to pretend he was sick on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Hannah had documented 6 incidents in writing. She had emailed Mr. Renz 3 times. She had requested, and been granted, a meeting at 4 o'clock on the Friday before Thanksgiving. Mr. Renz arrived 12 minutes late. He arrived in a grey suit, with the sleeves of a very expensive watch visible beneath one cuff, and a face that had been arranged at some earlier point in the day into an expression of tolerant impatience. He greeted her by name. She greeted him by his. He thanked her for making time. She thanked him for coming, and asked him, with a small, flat gesture, to sit. The classroom was quiet at that hour. The dry chalk and paper smell of a small private school hung in the warm, bright air. A radiator ticked under the row of cold windows. A faint scrape of a janitor's broom drifted in from the hall. The wood of the desks held a soft, sweet polish. The iron handle of the door was cold when he closed it behind him. He sat in the small student chair across from her desk. He crossed one leg over the other. He glanced at his watch. "I have a flight at 6:45, he said. "I have 10 minutes. "Then we will be efficient," Hannah said. She had a folder. She opened it. She began. She walked him, in fewer than 7 minutes, through 6 documented incidents of physical and verbal harassment by Marco Renz against Jason Cho, including a torn jacket, 2 episodes of stolen lunch money, 1 incident of public humiliation in the cafeteria, 1 shoving incident, and 1 written threat. She did not raise her voice. She did not editorialize. She read times, dates, and witnesses. She placed the photocopies of Marco's incident reports in front of his father, in chronological order. When she had finished, she folded her hands. "Mr. Renz," she said, "Miss Lane. Marco is intelligent. He is articulate. I think, with the right attention, he could be a good citizen of this classroom. I would like your help. I am certain there is another side to all of this, Miss Lane. There is, Mr. Renz, and I have included it in the report. Marco has told me that Jason once laughed at his shoes. Jason has confirmed this. We have addressed it. It does not justify the rest. Marco's mother and I, Mr. Renz. Yes. I do not need a defense of Marco. I need an end to the behavior. Miss Lane, I understand you are new to the district. I am not new to the district. I am new to this school. I have been in the district for 4 years. My family has been here for 15. I understand that, Mr. Renz. My grandfather was on the board. That, Mr. Renz, is exactly why we are having this meeting in person and not in writing. Out of respect for that history, I'm offering you the chance to address this with your son before I take it to administration. After the holiday, if there is one more incident, I will go directly to Mrs. Mahoney. There will be a recommended suspension. There will be a record. Are you threatening me, Miss Lane? No, Mr. Renz. Because that is how it sounds. It sounds that way, Hannah said quietly. Because I'm telling you exactly what is going to happen, in the order it is going to happen. That is not a threat. That is a calendar. There was a long pause. Mr. Renz looked at her. She looked back. She did not lean forward. She did not lean back. Her hands, on the desk in front of her, were entirely still. He finally said, "You are very confident, Miss Lane." I am certain, Mr. Renz. That is not the same thing. It is when I am right. He looked at the folder. He looked at the photocopies. He looked at the small, careful script in the margins of one of Marco's earlier essays, where Hannah had written, in red ink, "This is good. You can do this. Try the second draft." He closed the folder. "I will speak with him over the weekend," he said. She thanked him. He said her name once more. She answered. He told her, more quietly, that his son did not behave this way at home. That, Mr. Renz, is the most useful information you have given me in this meeting. He should be capable of behaving here the way he behaves at home. I am asking you to make him capable. He stood up. He held out his hand. She stood and took it, and shook it once and let go. He walked out. She sat down. She did not move for a full minute. Then she opened her laptop, opened her email, and forwarded the entire incident file to Mrs. Mahoney, with a polite note that began, "For your records, in the event of further developments." She closed the laptop. She breathed out, very slowly. She had not noticed, until that moment, that Adam Hale was leaning in the doorway of her classroom. He had a coffee in each hand. He was not smiling. He had the same expression he had worn in the kitchen the night before, the small, considered look that, on him, was the closest thing to admiration he ever showed. "How long have you been there?" she said. "Long enough." "Adam." "I came," he said, "to drive you home. I was early. Mr. Patel said you usually walk. I thought she might prefer the heat today. Did you hear all of that? From the door, yes. I'm sorry. Why are you sorry? I don't know, she said after a moment. I don't usually have an audience. You did not appear to need one. She laughed, once, a small, startled laugh, the way she had laughed at his joke the first night. He walked into the classroom. He set one of the coffees on her desk. He looked, briefly, at the spelling list pinned above the whiteboard. He said her name in a way that meant he had something he had been holding. She answered with a yes. He told her he was not in the habit of being instructed by anyone. She said she was aware. I just watched you reschedule a grown man's worldview in 7 minutes. I would like to be the kind of person who does not make a thing of it. I have not yet succeeded. Allow me, please, to make one comment. Go ahead. You are extraordinary. Adam. I am not flirting with you, Hannah. I am noting a fact. I would prefer that you accept the compliment and move on. Hannah looked at him. She did not smile exactly. The corners of her eyes lifted very slightly, in the way they had begun to lift when he came into the kitchen at night and asked her how the essays had been. She said, all right. He echoed it back, all right. She thanked him for the coffee. He told her she was welcome. She said she would take the ride home. Good, he said. She turned out the lights. She locked the classroom. They walked together down the long, quiet corridor, past the bulletin board with the construction paper turkeys and the laminated lists of approved Thanksgiving vocabulary words, past the front office where the secretary, seeing Adam, paused for half a beat and then waved very normally, and out into the cold afternoon. In the car, on the way home, neither of them spoke for the first 6 blocks. Then Adam said, very quietly, "She would have been a wonderful student of yours, my mother." "Tell me about her," Hannah said. He did. He talked, slowly, in pieces, all the way back to the Crest building, about a woman who had once made him stand on a stool to toast his own bread, who had read aloud to him every night until he was 9, who had quietly pushed him into chess club because he had been afraid of the older boys, who had outlived 2 cancers and finally lost to a 3rd one, who had asked him, in the last week of her life, to keep an eye on Vivian and to be, where he could, kinder. He talked about her in a way he had not, since her funeral, talked about her to anyone, including the priest who had buried her. When they reached the Crest building, he turned the engine off. He sat for a moment with his hands on the wheel. He said her first name. She answered with a yes. He thanked her for asking. She told him he was welcome. That was the night he asked her to come to the Foundation Gala. "It is the 2nd Saturday in December," he said, in the kitchen, while she made pasta. "It is the 4th annual gala for the Hale Family Foundation. I have to make a speech. I have not yet written it. I would like you to come with me." She turned. "As your date?" "As my friend." "Adam." "Hannah." "Are you sure?" "I am asking you, Hannah, knowing exactly how it will look. I am asking you because I would like you there. I am asking you because I think you would enjoy meeting Diana Riggs, who runs the foundation, and because I think the foundation could benefit from your eye. Please understand that I am not asking you to perform anything at the gala. I am asking you to attend it." "Mrs. Wexford will be there." "Yes." "Mrs. Wexford will hate it." "She will have to manage." Hannah turned the heat down on the burner. She set the wooden spoon across the rim of the pot. She wiped her hands on a tea towel. "All right," she said. "All right. What does one wear to a foundation gala?" "Black tie." "Adam, I will arrange for a dress to be sent over. It will not be, in any sense, a gift. It will be a loan from the foundation's events budget." "Adam, you will return it on Sunday." "That is, Hannah, do not argue. Save your arguing for next Friday's parent meeting." She laughed. She turned back to the pasta. "All right," she said again. The dress arrived on Wednesday. It was a deep emerald green silk, simply cut, with long sleeves and a high neckline and a soft draped back. There was a card with it that read, "Compliments of the Hale Family Foundation Events Committee, to be returned by December 9th. D. Riggs." There was also, at the bottom of the box, a small white card in Adam's handwriting that read, "She is on our side. A." Hannah hung the dress on the back of her bedroom door. She did not try it on for 2 days. When she did, she stood in front of the long mirror in the bedroom and looked at herself, and put a hand briefly to her mouth, and then put it down. In the kitchen, Adam was at the table reading a brief. She walked out, in the dress. He looked up. He set the brief down, very slowly, the way a man set down a glass that he was afraid he might drop. "Hannah," he said, "is it all right?" "It is. Yes." "Adam, it is more than all right, Hannah. All right. You have no idea. Adam, you are a grown man. You can put together a sentence." "Apparently not, Hannah." She laughed. She turned slowly in front of him. The hem of the dress caught the light from the western window and flared briefly, like the surface of a deep green river. "All right," she said. "I will not embarrass you." That was never in question. He looked at her for one more long, quiet moment. Then he picked up the brief again, the way he had set it down, with deliberate care, and went back to reading. He did not finish a single paragraph. The Saturday of the gala arrived bitterly cold. A car came at 6. Hannah, in the emerald dress and her own grey wool coat over it because the coat the foundation had loaned her felt like a costume, came down in the elevator with Adam, who was in a black dinner jacket that fit him the way a uniform fit a man who had earned it. Mr. Patel was at the door. He looked at Hannah, briefly, with the closest thing to a smile he allowed in uniform, and tipped his cap. "Miss Lane." "Mr. Patel?" "You look very well, miss." "Thank you." "Mr. Hale." "Thank you, Mr. Patel." In the car, Adam said, "Diana Riggs runs the foundation. She is 68, she has known me since I was 17, and she is the only person on earth who is allowed to call me Adam Patrick. She will like you. Do not let her bully you." "All right." "Rebecca will be there." "All right." "Cyril, her husband, will be there." "All right." "There will be cameras." "Adam?" "Yes?" "What is the speech about?" "The speech," Adam said, "is about my mother." Hannah looked at him. "You haven't written it yet." "I have written drafts of it for 11 months. None of them have been right." "What will you say?" "I do not know yet, Hannah. I will know when I am at the podium." She did not press him. The gala was held in a long, polished room on the second floor of an old hotel, with chandeliers and white linen, and small votive candles, and 300 people in formal clothes who had paid $5,000 a plate for the privilege of being there. The room smelled faintly of orchid and warm wax and old wood. The carpet under Hannah's heels was thick enough to soften every step she took. Somewhere, a string quartet played a low, slow piece she did not recognize, the bow catching against silver gut strings in a quiet, rolling pulse that moved underneath the murmur of 300 polite voices. The chandeliers cast a bright, soft gold over every shoulder and every glass and every silver fork, and Hannah, when she crossed the threshold on Adam's arm, felt for one beat as if she had walked into a painting, and stopped, and breathed once, and went on. Adam moved through the room the way Adam moved through rooms, with a slight, controlled efficiency, shaking hands, listening longer than he spoke, introducing Hannah as Miss Lane, who teaches 6th grade English at Park Glen and is an unexpectedly important friend. Hannah did not, in 2.5 hours, make any of the small mistakes she had been afraid she would make. She chose the correct fork. She did not ask for ice in her wine. She listened more than she spoke. She remembered 3 names per table. At 8:40, Adam was called to the podium. He stood. He looked for one beat at Hannah. He walked up to the front of the room. The room quieted in the way rooms quieted when they were about to be asked to feel something. Adam set a single index card on the podium. He did not look at it. "Good evening," he said. "Good evening," the room said back, in the soft, polite chorus of people who had been to many of these. "My mother died 11 months ago," Adam said. The room went still. "She was 66. She had been sick for 2 years. She had outlived 2 cancers, and she did not outlive the third. She died in the end in her own bed, in the apartment 4 blocks from where we are sitting right now, while I was on a phone call about a port in the Netherlands. I have been told by the people who were with her that she was not afraid. I do not know if this is the truth, or if it is what people say in such circumstances. I have decided to believe it." Hannah, at the table, did not move. "My mother believed, very strongly, that the only way to live a life worth dying out of was to be useful to the people one happened to love, and to a small number of strangers if one had the time. My mother had time. She gave it. She gave it to her family, including my sister, who is here tonight, and including me. She gave it to her oldest friend, Vivian Marsh, who outlived her by 6 weeks, and who used to host this very gala in this very room. She gave it to a number of strangers in this city, whose names some of you in this room will recognize, and most of you will not." He paused. He looked, briefly, at the index card. He did not read from it. "In the 11 months since she died," he said, "I have not been the kind of son she would have been proud of." A quiet ran through the room. "I have been, in many of the easy ways, a fine son. I have managed the estate. I have honored the obligations. I have written the checks. I have attended the right funerals. I have not dismantled anything she built. I have also, in the harder ways, been a great disappointment to her memory. I have not been kind. I have been busy. I have not been present in any room that did not pay me to be there. I have not, until a month ago, opened any of the 3 letters she left me before she died." He paused again. "That changed," Adam said, "because I bought an apartment without looking at it. Many of you have heard the rumor, which is not a rumor. I bought the apartment that had belonged to Vivian Marsh. I bought it because my mother had asked me to keep an eye on Vivian, and after Vivian died, I had a small, private intention to live in her old apartment for a while, to feel close to my mother." He paused. "I did not, in fact, live in it. I bought it and forgot about it for 11 months. In that time, the executor of the Marsh estate, who was Vivian's nephew, defrauded a young woman by renting that apartment to her at a fraction of its market value and pocketing the rent. The young woman is a 6th-grade teacher in this city. She moved into the apartment in good faith. When I finally walked through the door of my own property, I found her in the kitchen, making tea." A small ripple went through the room. Hannah felt the eyes of 299 people find her at her table. She did not look down. She did not look up. She looked at Adam. "I expected," Adam said, "to be furious. I expected to call lawyers. I expected to put her out by the end of the night. Instead, that young woman cut me a piece of bread. She asked me if I had eaten. She let me sit at her table. She showed me, in the next 30 days, what it looked like to live the way my mother had asked me to live, and that I had stopped knowing how to do. She did this without lecturing me, without flirting with me, without asking me for anything. She did it by being herself." He took a small breath. "My mother," he said, "would have been very fond of her. My mother would have wanted to know that I had told you about her, tonight, in this room, and that I had not pretended she was a footnote." He paused. "Her name is Hannah Lane. She is at table 6. She did not know, when I asked her here tonight, that I was going to say any of this. I am sorry, Hannah, for putting you in this position. I will not put you in it again. I want it tonight, for the people who knew my mother to know who Hannah is, and to know that whatever you have heard or will read in tomorrow's papers, the truth is that this past month is the first month in 11 that I have been a son my mother would have recognized. I owe that, in large part, to a stranger I found in my kitchen." He looked down at the index card. He turned it over. He did not read from it. "My mother used to say," he said, "that the only thing more boring than a man who never stopped working was a man who had stopped working too soon." I'm 32 years old, and I have spent 9 years trying to outrun a sentence she did not even mean as advice. Tonight I would like to try, instead, to live by the one she meant. Be useful to the people you love. Be useful to a small number of strangers if you have the time. Be present in the rooms that do not pay you to be present. Open the letters when they come. Eat the bread when it is offered. Cut a slice for the next person. He looked up. "Thank you," he said. "Please, eat your dinner." He stepped down. The room, for a beat, did not respond. Then the applause began, slowly, and rose, and held. Adam did not return to the table. He went instead to a side door, where Diana Riggs caught his arm and said something to him in a low voice that made him look briefly down at his shoes. He nodded. He kissed her cheek. He came back to table 6. He sat down beside Hannah. He did not look at her. After a long minute, Hannah set her hand very lightly on the tablecloth between them, palm up. Adam, after another long minute, set his hand on top of hers. His palm was warm. Hers was not. The skin at the base of her wrist was cool from the cold air that had been pressing in under the high, tall window beside their table, and his fingers, settling against hers, were steady. She did not move. Neither did he. The white linen under their hands was thick and slightly stiff, and somewhere across the room a small, soft burst of laughter rose and faded, and the string quartet shifted into a piece in a minor key, and a waiter in white gloves moved between the tables with a silver tray of coffee cups, and Hannah's pulse, against the inside of her own wrist where Adam's thumb rested, grew slow and even and unhurried. That was all. The next morning, the New York Sentinel ran a story in the lifestyle section that was headlined, "Billionaire's Accidental Tenant, a Quiet Teacher, a Wrong Penthouse, and a Speech about His Mother." The reporter, who was not the same reporter who had once tried to use Hannah against Rebecca, had been at the gala. She had written the story honestly. She had quoted the speech in full. She had described Hannah as a poised young woman in emerald who declined to answer questions but smiled politely at 3 of them, and had described Adam Hale as a man who, for the first time in many of our memories, looked like a son. Rebecca Hale Wexford read the article over breakfast. She put it down. She picked up her phone. She called Adam. "Adam?" "Rebecca." "I owe Miss Lane an apology." "You owe yourself one, Rebecca." "Yes," she said. "All right. Adam." "Yes?" "Mum would have liked her." "I know." "Tell her I said so." "I will." He hung up. He went into the kitchen. The morning was bright and cold against the windows. The smell of warm bread lifted from the oven. A thin smoke of toasted crust drifted across the wood of the table. The kettle gave a soft, hot whisper on the stove. The iron radiator under the sill ticked once. Hannah's silver spoon was bright on the saucer. The leather of her cardigan sleeve brushed his shoulder as he passed. Hannah was at the table, with the Sentinel folded next to her plate. She was reading the front page, not the lifestyle section. She had not, Adam noted, put the article face up. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning." "My sister called." "Oh." "She would like to apologize to you." That is generous of her." "She also says my mother would have liked you." Hannah looked up. "Adam." "Yes?" "You said all of those things last night." "Yes." "In front of 300 people." "Yes." "Adam." "Yes, Hannah." She did not finish the sentence. She got up. She walked around the kitchen island to him. She put her arms around him, very simply, with her cheek against the lapel of his shirt, and stood there for a count of 10. Then she stepped back, picked up the kettle, and made him a cup of tea. "Drink it," she said, "before it goes cold." He did. 6 weeks later, on a Sunday afternoon in the last week of January, Adam Hale and Hannah Lane were on the floor of the smaller bedroom of the penthouse on the 32nd floor of the Crest building, which they had decided to convert into a study. There were 2 cans of paint, a roller, a stack of bookshelves still in their cardboard boxes, and a take-out pizza in the middle of the floor. Hannah was on a stepladder, with a paintbrush, doing the corner near the window that the roller could not reach. Adam was on his knees, building the first bookshelf with an Allen key, looking the way men looked when they were building a bookshelf on a Sunday afternoon. That is, slightly defeated and entirely happy. "This is the wrong screw," he said. "It is the right screw, Adam. It is too short. It is the right screw. The instructions say so. The instructions are wrong. Adam. Hannah. Try the other end of the bag." He tried the other end of the bag. He found the longer screw. He did not say anything. "You are welcome," Hannah said. "I have not said thank you." "You will." "I will." Outside the window, snow was beginning to fall. The first flakes drifted past the glass in small, wet stars, brushing once against the cold pane and slipping out of view. The avenue, 32 stories below, was full of small, slow taxicabs and small, slow people going home, and the headlights below ran along the wet stone of the curb in long, bright, soft yellow streaks. The radiator under the windowsill made a single, low, warm click. The smell of fresh paint, soft and chemical and clean, lay over the smaller bedroom like a shawl. The take-out pizza on the floor between them was already going cold, but neither of them seemed in any hurry to eat it. Hannah climbed off the stepladder, set the brush across the rim of the can, and sat down on the floor with her back to the wall and her ankles crossed. "Adam?" "Yes?" "I have to tell you something." "All right." "I gave my notice on the apartment." He did not stop assembling the shelf for a beat. Then he did. He set the Allen key down. He looked at her. "Hannah." "It expires at the end of June. We agreed on that. I did not want to drift past it. I told the building manager on Friday." "All right." She started to say his name, and to say that she was not, and he stopped her, gently, with hers. "Where will you go?" he said. She looked at him. She did not answer at first. She did not need to. "I do not know yet, Adam," she said. "I thought we could talk about it." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he stood up. He crossed the room. He sat down on the floor across from her, with his back against the opposite wall, his legs out, his hands flat on the boards. The bookshelf, half assembled, lay between them like a small, unimportant fence. "Hannah?" "Yes." "I do not want to lose you in June." "I know." "I would like, if you would consider it, for you to stay." "Adam." "I'm not asking you to live with me, Hannah. I would like that. I would like that very much. I am, however, asking you only to consider remaining in this apartment, which has, I think, become as much yours as mine. If you wish to remain here as my tenant, you may. If you wish to remain here as my friend, you may. If you wish, eventually, to remain here as something more than that, I would be the most fortunate man in this city. But I'm not asking you to choose any of those tonight. I am asking you, only, not to leave in June." Hannah looked at him. Outside, the snow fell faster. "Adam," she said. "Yes. I am not going to leave in June." "All right. I was going to tell you so when we sat down. I was going to ask you whether you would mind if I stayed." "Hannah." "Yes. You are extraordinary." "You have said. I will keep saying." She laughed, the small, startled laugh he had heard for the first time on the night of the kettle, and that, by now, was a sound he would have recognized in any room in any city in the world. "Adam." "Yes." "Build the bookshelf." "Yes," he said. He did. She painted the corner. Outside, snow piled on the windowsill of a penthouse on the 32nd floor of the Crest building. in an apartment that had been, for a long time, empty, and was now, very plainly, not. In June, the school year ended. Marco Renz, who had over the course of the spring become the chief volunteer for the school's anti-bullying program, gave a small, awkward speech at the assembly, which his father attended in the second row. Jason Cho's mother stopped Hannah in the hallway and held her hands without speaking for a count of 5. Mrs. Mahoney, in a private office, offered Hannah a permanent contract for the following year. Hannah accepted it. That afternoon, Hannah walked the 2 miles home, the way she had walked it every day since November, with the tote bag over her shoulder and the late afternoon sun on her hair. Mr. Patel was at the door of the Crest building. He opened it for her. "Miss Lane." "Mr. Patel?" "You walked again, miss." "I always do." "It is a hot day, miss." "I know." "Mr. Hale is upstairs." "Thank you." "Miss Lane." "Yes?" "It is a good day, miss." "It is, Mr. Patel." She crossed the lobby. She got into the elevator. She rose. In the apartment, on the kitchen table, there was a small green ceramic mug, slightly chipped on the rim, with a stem of grocery store carnations in it. The kettle was on the back burner. The window was open. The afternoon light was the same afternoon light it had been on a Monday in November, the night Adam Hale had walked into a kitchen that should have been empty, and found a woman in a navy cardigan lifting a kettle off a stove. Adam was at the table. He looked up. He set the brief he had been reading down. "Hannah." "Adam, how was the last day?" "Long." "And good?" "And good." She set her bag on the kitchen island. She crossed the floor. She sat down opposite him. She looked, briefly, at the small white card she had, 7 months earlier, written in handwriting and left on this same island for a man she had not yet known. She did not need to read it. She remembered exactly what it said. "Adam," she said. "Yes." "Drink your tea." "It has gone cold." "Then I will make you another." "Hannah." "Yes." "Stay." She looked at him. "I am staying," she said. She got up. She put the kettle on. The water began, slowly, to climb to the small, clean note it had climbed to on a Monday night in November. A note that had once startled the man into stillness in the corridor of his own apartment, and that, on this afternoon in June, no longer startled anyone, and was, instead, simply the sound of the place that had become, at last, both of theirs. The kettle whistled. Hannah lifted it. The steam climbed off the spout in a thin, warm ribbon and softened, briefly, in the late June light at the kitchen window. Hannah's hand, against the dark wood of the handle, was steady. The same small, clean clatter she had made on a Monday night in November rose again. The soft, small noise of a kettle being set down by a person who had done it many times before, and Adam, at the table, listened to it with his eyes closed. When he opened them, Hannah was at the cabinet, taking down 2 mugs. She set them on the counter beside the green ceramic one with the chip on its rim, in a small, even row, the way she set out everything she touched. The grocery store carnations on the windowsill bent very slightly in the warm air rising from the stove. The smell of bergamot lifted again, the same quiet, bright bergamot that had filled this kitchen on the night Adam had first come home, and not been able to recognize, at first, that he had come home. He pressed one palm flat against the warm wood of the kitchen table. He breathed out. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, 2 cups of tea cooled on the table, beside a small, chipped green mug and a stem of grocery store carnations. In the apartment on the 32nd floor of the Crest building, where, 7 months earlier, a billionaire had walked into the wrong penthouse and had found, very quietly, the rest of his life.